Hello, everybody. Welcome to Worldbuilders Weekly. My name's Gray, and I'm adjusting the contrast on my screen right now, which is why I look kind of funny. I'm the Executive Director of Worldbuilders, and I'm happy to be here. Hey, who are you?
I'm Zay. I'm the Assistant Director of Worldbuilders, and I feel indifferent about my being here. I'm just joking.
Well, we don't. We're glad to see you.
Welcome back, everybody. You know how it is. Every week you come here for your latest Worldbuilders news. We talk about special deals in our market. We have our trivia, nerdy tangents, and a bunch of feel-good geeks doing good stories. Wow, that was a horrible way to enter this, but like every week.
And sometimes we have guests, not this week, but we also are trying to do more giveaways. So the exciting part is that you can enter a giveaway if you'd like, and we are going to be giving away some advanced readers copies that we're going to talk about today. So yeah, that'll be fun. But first, speaking of competitions, we have to go back to Trivia Tuesday. And our when last we visited Trivia Tuesday, our intrepid question was talking about The Lion, the Witch, and the Wardrobe. And the question is, after making his way through a wardrobe into Narnia, literary character Edmund meets a queen who gives him something hot to drink and whatever he wishes to eat. What is the name of the sweet treat that he requests? And we had lots of people DMing in the answers. I actually was reassured. I haven't read these books in a very long time. And it is Turkish Delight, which I've never actually had. Have you ever had Turkish Delight?
Probably not. I don't. That doesn't sound familiar for me.
Never had that either.
Yeah.
Anyone in chat. I don't even know what it. I had a hard time figuring out what marzipan was, but
marzipan is
apparently they're anything but a delight. Not a fan. Okay. And Jeannie, it's not for advanced readers, as in like people who are advanced at reading. It's an advanced reader copy, as in given out before it's published. So you'd be fine.
Which we'll talk about a little more coming up
there. We'll talk about that in a little bit. Yep.
I'm curious, Gray, did you know the answer to this one though, even though you've never had Turkish Delight?
I did, because I did enjoy the Chronicles of Narnia and in my dissolute youth. That I did remember, although I almost said marzipan, and I think that's because there's some other thing where there's a marzipan bear or something, some other thing I read, but yeah. So that's that one. You want to share the new trivia question?
Yes, I would love to. This one is pretty straightforward. And as y'all know, please answer in our DMs, not live on the chat, so that everyone has a fair chance to get that monthly prize. For this Trivia Tuesday, what is the name of the member of the X-Men whose life was saved by a purple dragon? So who is the X-Men whose life was saved by a purple dragon?
I'm gonna put in a caveat here. As an X-Men fan, I'm gonna say that you might think you're going to be clever by putting into the answer all of them, because it could be argued that various times one or more of them have been saved by a purple. But this is a specific direct one, so let's not make it. Let's not just go with the cheap answer. Let's go with the true trivia answer. So
true trivia answers only here.
Yes, exactly. We want true, no true trivia person, whatever, especially if they're from Scotland. All right, it's time. Well, hey, K-Joel, no, you shouldn't have an idea yet. We want them to be DM'd, not put into there. Trivial answers are, of course, welcome.
Trivial answers.
So we are going to talk about ARCs, and some of you may wonder what ARCs are and why we don't pronounce them ARCs. Actually, some people might pronounce them ARCs. I don't know enough about them.
Some people do call them ARCs.
I did in my head for a long time. But ARC stands for Advanced Reader Copy. And in the literary world, it's the preview copies of books that they send out to all kinds of people, especially bookstores. And since we don't actually get a lot of them directly at Worldbuilders, and that's because, Zay, I'm reading over your part of the script. Sorry about that.
Oh, I mean, that's cool. I would also say that that's not exactly true. We do have quite a few ARCs at Worldbuilders. It's just that we give them out as prizes because we're not allowed to sell them.
Right, we do, but we don't get them directly from the publishers. We tend to get them from authors who get them from publishers.
Correct. Yeah.
Or from bookstores. One of our, we don't sell all the books in the world. So when we want to recommend somebody goes get another book, we recommend a roomofOne'sOwn.com, which is the website of the partner bookstore we have called A Room of One's Own in Madison, Wisconsin. And they oftentimes will say they have in their back room, they have this beautiful shelf of their ARCs. And if Gretchen's watching, hi Gretchen. Gretchen has sent us, not only have they donated books to our prize draw, which you've seen some of them, and Zay knows where they are. They've also donated some for our staff to read. And so we're going to talk about some of the ones that I got to read during the break. That's how I spent a lot of my break. It was just luxurious, just actually reading for hours a paper book. And I wanted to share some of them with you to talk about what's in them in case you're looking to boost up your 2021 reading list. And we're also going to give some of them away during this. This is probably the time to mention the thing. It's I think we have to actually start up the whole drawing. What's in the book? Pages, words? Occasionally, yes, that is usually what's in them. But I am looking to see if we can start the drawing, like create the drawing in the chat so that we can then tell people how to enter it. Or maybe they just need to enter it. I don't know if we need to start that out. I'm looking there to see if Captain Macbeth knows she's going to start out fun. I can't do it. Nope. Well, I will say we should probably talk about ALCs as well real quick.
Yeah, I kind of wanted to dwell on ARCs just a tiny bit. It's kind of similar to uncorrected proofs. It's pretty cool to have an advanced reader's copy because it's kind of this like nugget of a book before it's finalized. So, you might see things in there, especially if you can find an uncorrected ARC, uncorrected proof ARCs, where it's, you might see like a little snip where it says image goes here. And it's just kind of like having this like little treasure of the book before it's published. You kind of have like this little special piece where sometimes when books are published, they then have little differences in them. So I don't know, it's just a really cool thing, especially if you like the author. Some authors sign some of them, but that's not always the case.
Right. And we have for our on Libro.fm, we also sometimes we do get direct access as a bookseller to some sound audiobook, and those are ALCs, advanced listening copies. Yeah. Oh, hey, Gretchen's there. Hey, Gretchen. Yeah, galleys is the old school way to call them instead of using suffering from TMA, which is too many acronyms. But the main thing is we are going to talk about some of these galleys that we read. I'm going to talk about some, and then Zay's going to talk about some stuff she's been reading. And a lot of these are, if you're looking for the hardcover copy, we will highly recommend that you go to roomofOne'sOwn.com. Sorry, roomofOne'sOwn.com, and order them if you want the hard copies. And if you don't, if you'd rather have them on audio, Some of them, we have links to those as well on our Libro.fm. And when you order through them, you can sometimes get them for free if you start up a new membership. And if you don't, either way, it helps out Worldbuilders and the work we do. So all kinds of fun stuff. Yeah, sorry about the confusion about the dice and the ARCs. That's just because we had some stuff left over from our streams last year. I can say last year. Isn't that great? Zay, have you gotten used to writing 2021 now, or have you written 2020?
Oh, absolutely not. I haven't written a date on anything yet, and I'm just gonna be piling through with that 2020 probably all the way till June. I'm horrible at that.
So, first book. Zay, I think this is a book I think you would enjoy a lot. It's called All City. It's by Alex DeFrancesco. And it is a apocalyptic thing, a climate change kind of thing. In a near future New York City, ravaged by climate change and economic inequality, a superstorm hits, leaving behind only those who had nowhere else to go and no way to get out. And among those who remain are 24-year-old Michaela, who works in the city's most ubiquitous convenience store chain, and Chessie, an 18-year-old genderqueer anarchist living in an abandoned IRT station in the Bronx. And the main reason I was thinking you'd like it, Zay, is because along with the sort of climate disaster kind of stuff that they have in there, there's also art plays a huge part in this, especially big canvas kind of stuff. And I will also say that one of the reasons I really enjoyed this is because characters aren't what you think they are. Like you look at somebody, they have like the archetypes of characters of, oh yeah, that's the spunky little hero. Oh, that's the sidekick. Oh, that's the whatever. People are people in here, and they're not all perfect. They're not all bad. And their story arcs don't go in the directions you necessarily expect. And so it was a really powerful book. It's also a fast read. It's a short book. So I really like it. And this is one of the ones we are going to be giving away. So enter in the chat. Any questions about this from the chat or from you? And as I talk about the books, I'm going to probably go too fast, so feel free to interrupt.
No, I will dwell on this later, but this sounds exactly like the kind of book that I would like, and I will again dwell on that in a moment about why I like those kinds of post-apocalyptic books. But yeah, that sounds right up my alley.
Right. Well, you're well known for your armor thing, and so the copy of this particular book reminded me of you. And I will have some problems with the cover of this book. It's not terribly well lit, but mainly because the character is described as a dark-skinned woman with curly, ringleted hair, and the person, and also basically describes them with African-American features. And the cover is very obviously a Caucasian woman, which that's one complaint about it. That being said, it was a really fun fantasy romp in like a Game of Thrones style thing, Gladiator / Game of Thrones. They call them savages, brutal, efficient, expendable. The Empire relies on them, the greatest weapon they ever developed. Culled from the streets of their cities, they take on the ones no one will miss and throw them by the thousands at the Empire's enemies. So you get lots of sword fights and that kind of stuff. But at the same time, he manages to put in a whole lot of sort of examination of class and, capitalist expansion and things like that. And even a lot of sort of propaganda type stuff. So interesting stuff in Savage Legion. Matt Wallace is also, we had Mur Lafferty on a lot last year in our Worldbuilders Weekly and in the 11s, and he works with her a lot for some of the podcasting. So it's definitely a worthwhile one. This is the one that I'm really excited about. So, Firebreak This comes out very shortly. It's by Nicole Corner-Stace, and she has a Patreon as well, by the way, if you want to get more advanced stuff. And in fact, today, this very day, on the Uncanny Magazine website, has a short story called Pathfinding out. And the easiest way for me to describe this, if people know about or have seen the movie or have read the book Ready Player One, this is the book that we wish Ready Player One would have been. This is the one. This book is, it's again, post-apocalyptic kind of thing. The world's run by corporations, two main ones. Water scarcity is a real, basically water is the currency. And people, stop me if this sounds familiar, people spend a lot of time earning money by going online and playing video games for other people's entertainment and hoping that enough people pay attention that they might get sponsored or have people throw money at them. So it's sort of Twitch streaming taken to an unfortunate thing, but it's really, really well done. It's not your typical, it's more inclusive in terms of gender and representation. And it's just exciting. It's like I was literally stayed up several nights in a row, more than I should have, because I wanted to find out what happened next. And there were moments when I was sort of, going, yes. And there were moments I'm like, no, that can't have happened. And so it definitely took me on a ride. Firebreak by Nicole Corner-Stace. Highly, highly recommended. And you might walk away from this stream with it coming towards you, because this is another one we're going to give away. So what's next here? Automatic E. Now, this one, I'm going to give it a lukewarm recommendation, not because it wasn't a good movie, but because I don't read Japanese. It's a translation, and I'm sure that Matt Trevode did a great job translating it, but because it was a translation, it didn't draw me in as much. It was more like reading a book of fairy tales or something like that. Like there was a remove to it. That being said, it was very interesting. They describe it as think Blade Runner, but set in the floating world of Edo, Japan, which is a perfect description of it. It is really good. It has a lot of steampunk kind of references to it. Yeah, it's very much, it's more of a series of interrelated stories, but they are very interrelated with some common characters. And it did have, sort of the, oh my God, that's what happened, or that's who that person was kind of moments. But it was enjoyable. It just wasn't an immersive book for me. So definitely enjoyed it, but you can't give it quite as much of a recommendation. Perhaps it will be happier in someone else's hands, which is why we're going to give it away. All right, now for the one that I'm going to have to try not to gush too much about. Did anybody in the chat like Lovecraft Country, the HBO series? Because if you saw that and you enjoyed that, this is the book for you. I've been a fan of Eliadon Johnson for quite a while. This particular book is just, I did actually read it in one day because I couldn't get up from the chair and move, and it was amazing. That being said, because it is very immersive, like the opposite, it was like drew me in. I was feeling like I was there in just after just at the beginning of World War II for the United States. It's set in Harlem. It has dance in the nightclubs, and it has lots of gardening. If you like gardening, the entire third of the book, middle third of the book, is amazing.
And just to say the title out loud, Trouble the Saints is
Trouble the Saints by Eliadon Johnson. Yes, thank you. Yes. So yeah, Trouble the Saints. Also very hard hitting in terms of a realistic depiction of racism. Well, I should say, I expect it's a realistic depiction. I'm not one to judge that, but I will say that was a big, kind of like in Lovecraft Country, some of the scariest moments were not so much the big giant monsters, but more just the everyday racism that was very real. same thing happens in this, including things like sunset counties and things like that. So could not recommend this one enough. It is so good, so good. This is one of those books that when I finished it, I didn't want to read anything else that day. I didn't even want to watch TV because like there's nothing, like nothing's going to match this. So highly, highly recommend this one. And I see we have an audiobook. I'm actually probably going to get the audiobook and listen to it again, just because I would really love to hear those characters' voice. And the last one that I'm going to talk about, I can't give you for sure because I'm actually only this far in it. But it is by, hey, Julia. It is by Nicole Galland. And the reason I'm going to recommend it, even though I haven't finished it, is because you see how it's the sequel to Neal Stephenson's DODO. DODO is the Department of Diachronic Operations. And it is the book that she wrote with Neal Stephenson. I did listen to the audiobook on a long car trip, and it was just hilarious. It's really funny. It's one of the best time travel and original ideas about time travel that I've ever read. And that's hard to do these days, although they're getting better at it. But it's just very clever. It's laugh out loud. And this is one of those books where if you look, you see how they have like some parts of it are like on manuscripts and things like that. It's an epistolary novel. So you get to read things like chat logs, diary entries, letters, things like that. And that's how it's put through there. So I'm really enjoying the second one. This one she wrote without Neal Stephenson, which proves that she is completely capable of doing that. Neal Stephenson, I have a love-hate relationship with his books anyway. So I'm really enjoying her book. Oh, it also has a whole lot of stuff about witches. Witches play a huge role in this science fiction / magical novel. So Rise and Fall of Dodo is hilarious. And I can also highly recommend it in audio because they have multiple narrators reading it. So yeah, that's my list of books. Thanks again, Gretchen, for making my break so wonderful. I got to read so much and it was so nice. So, all right, Zay, take it away.
So I have a list. I'm not going to quite do exactly what Gray did. I also don't have the books, but we'll link ones that we have audiobooks available for. And these are also not ARCs. These are super available stuff. And a lot of these are not stuff that I read over break. It's just kind of a combination of things like from more recent, like last year into this year, that I enjoyed either reading or rereading. And the first one is one that I really like for a couple reasons that I'll go into later. And it is definitely not the cool, inclusive, all city that Gray said, but it is like kind of a post-apocalyptic zombie. And again, I'll kind of talk about why I like this stuff later, but it's called Mountain Man, and it's by Keith C. Blackmore. This is one I've just been rereading like on my phone. It's an easy read, and it kind of just is this mundane, very monologue take on being just your regular guy after the apocalypse happens. So like the zombie apocalypse has happened and it's just this kind of like old dude who's lived up in the mountains in his house and has somehow managed to just survive after the zombie apocalypse happened. And he's also like just an alcoholic. It just kind of has this very mundane take on stuff. One of my favorite things from this novel is him saying, you don't think about what you'd need when the world goes to shit, but it ends up being toilet paper, which this year turned out to be very prevalent, even though this book is a little bit older now. But yeah, so the next one that I read in 2020 was actually recommended by my partner. It's a little short story called Cookie Jar by Stephen King. So going back to the Stephen King, but it's a really great little read. I read it in probably like a half hour. And I'm also a slow reader, I would say. So this book is this little story is super manageable. Um, Another short story that I read this year that everyone knows I read because I talked to Lisa is
I have a question for you first.
what's that?
On the Stephen King one, have you read lots of other Stephen King books?
Yes.
Which ones have you liked the best? Because Stephen King has a lot of different flavors, and depending
he does.
on what,
So I think Stephen King is a wonderful writer and can paint a picture no matter what he writes. I think that's pretty well established in his career. I'm just not a fan of genres of like, cars that come to life. I'm also not a huge fan of like Pet Cemetery, and I just also didn't like Goosebumps as like a kid, so I didn't really just enjoy that kind of genre. But I do love, The Shining. That's a good classic.
So more character driven as opposed to the monster driven kind of
stuff. Yeah, absolutely. I think psychological thrillers are definitely more up my alley, if we're not talking about like high fantasy. But yeah, the Cookie Jar is actually, it's just, you have to read it because it's just exactly what the title says. It's about a cookie jar that was given as like a gift from someone's mentally ill mother who passed away, and there's kind of these secrets that are all around this cookie jar. But yeah,
I can believe it. One of the first Stephen King stories I ever read was called The Mangler, and he managed to give me nightmares about a freaking laundry folding machine. I mean, so this guy is good. So yeah.
Yeah, it's not a horror short story. So I don't think that the only trigger warnings I would need is maybe if you had a parent with mental illness. He does really briefly but very accurately describe that. But yeah, so the next one is As the Last I May Know by S.L. Wong. We had a whole podcast, we had a whole stream where we invited Lisa on and we chatted about this. It was one of her Hugo winning short stories. Yeah. And it was a wonderful short story. One thing I appreciate about this story is the characters' aesthetic as well as their names and pronunciations are East Asian, which I have a large love for. As a lot of you know in the chat, I almost went into studying like Eastern ancient cultures. So yeah, huge appreciation there. And it's just nice to read things that aren't, white Western takes on stuff. The next one is Ocean at the End of the Lane. So I had started reading this book a very long time ago, and then I never finished it. And then this year, my partner and I had just kind of brought it up, and he ended up ordering the book for us to read. So we started reading it to each other at night, and then we switched to the audiobook version when we were going on a very long drive. And it's narrated by Neil Gaiman himself, which I really enjoyed. I think listening to the author talk through their own book, especially if they're a good storyteller like Neil Gaiman himself is. And it's just one of those books that's very rooted in reality, but just has these like fantastical things that happen around the main character. So it kind of has, I would say, kind of witch kind of vibes to it. And also just like very old, kind of ancient beings. But yeah, the next one would be Ink and Sigil. So we talked to Kevin Hearn, so that's another one. Ink and Sigil is really whimsical, beautiful. It goes into this fantastical, but again, very grounded in reality kind of descriptions, and I'm a person that I any kind of description with like textile or like the way things feel or smell is a really good read for me. It really like grounds me in the book, and also I think anything that kind of beautifully describes sensory, and the other book that does that really well, I think, is Slow Regard for Silent Things. It's very that kind of. So he does actually talk about ink and sigil, and like the way that like ink goes on the paper. And if you guys were in that live stream, Kevin himself is really passionate about that stuff, and the old actual mixing that goes into the inks. And so reading him writing about it, it's very obvious like the effort and the research he put into that. And that's kind of one thing I really love when I'm reading something. I also started reading on rereading just on my phone in passing, mostly during just like little breaks during work, is rereading the Walking Dead comics.
Got to cheer yourself up, right?
So I didn't really get into the show, and I didn't super care for the show. And it's probably just because I felt so attached to the comics. One thing that I did look at in the show when I had started watching it was I really appreciated how pretty close I would say it is to the actual comic. I think they represented the characters pretty okay.
I thought the show was so much more cheerful than the comic. I mean,
see, that's the thing, is the comic is definitely a much more adult version of things. I would definitely say there are some hard trigger warnings in that comic. It, especially like one of the biggest trigger warnings that I didn't know going into it is it kind of has some like child abuse and assault, which is not it's not great. It's not a huge part of the book. It's very much kind of in passing. But I definitely wasn't ready for that. But yeah, they're good comics. If you like a very dark, very adult representation of things. But I also really just liked the artwork. At the time when I first read the Walking Dead comics, I was playing Fallout New Vegas, and the kind of very like corny 50s guy with the cleft chin, go get him representation is similar to the way that the main character looked. So I think that immediately I just kind of liked the aesthetic of it. But yeah. And then the last one that I've been rereading just like on my phone is The Road.
Because the Walking Dead comics were too cheerful for you.
Right. So The Road by Cormac McCarthy. And this kind of relates to The Mountain Man. And, like I keep saying that as Gray and I kind of get past these lists and we go more into discussion, I'll talk about why I kind of like those things. But The Road is, so Cormac McCarthy as an author is a little bit interesting and frustrating in that there is no explanation or interviews given from this guy. He was, I believe, on Oprah when this book came out and just completely uninterested, did not want to be there. It's very obvious. And when people like ask him questions, he kind of gives the answer just like, I read it. It's there. It's perfect. There's nothing that needs to be said more about it. So it's kind of, I'm sorry, I got distracted by Macbeth's long and winding road. But yeah, it's another post-apocalyptic book. This one is pretty popular, I'd say. I think because they made a movie with Viggo Mortensen, who was a high-profile actor at the time. So, the book also gained popularity from that. The movie is good. It is not the same as the book. Almost at all. I would say they definitely tried to breathe like more life into the characters. There's a lot more like, there's just a lot more I would say, empathy towards like the characters than in the book. It's just like this guy and this boy, and you are almost kind of like retracted from being able to really relate to them. It's a very interesting read. I really like it.
Yeah, I will say, Jeannie mentions The Road Broke Me, and I would say, yeah, The Road is definitely not a book that I'd recommend if you are already feeling depressed about the state of the world of things.
Yeah, I would also not recommend most of the books on here then. I like those kinds of books that are very dark and make you think. Please don't also read Mountain Man or The Walking Dead then, Jeannie.
I also, though, don't you think it's kind of, I mean, I'd be interested because I've been a big fan of the post-apocalyptic things too. I mean, one of my favorite books growing up was My Side of the Mountain, which isn't post-apocalyptic, but it was about somebody going up and, roughing it and all by themselves. And the thing is that, I mean, first of all, like nobody wrote in the zombie apocalypse about the people running out saying, zombies are fake news, and rushing up to go ahead and let zombies bite them to prove that it was fake and things like that, which is kind of what is the real situation, as we discovered. Or the all you have to do to stop a zombie is shoot it in the head. Well, you can't make me shoot it in the head. I'm an American. I'm free. I'm going to shoot it in the leg because that's the way a true American. Don't tell me to be a fascist and shoot a zombie in the head. That kind of thing, and the whole idea that what is really needed in a post-apocalyptic situation, the biggest skill is not about the guns. It's about being able to grow food, or being able to can food, or being able to dress a wound, or identify, create medicines and things like that. I mean, I wonder if we're going to see a change in the way that this kind of fiction is written, given our experience during the COVID pandemic.
So given that, I think that you might like this read of Mountain Man, Gray, because this is what I keep saying is I'm gonna like explain this. So what I really like in these kinds of books, I really love when they just take completely unextraordinary people that are just regular people and put them in crazy, extraordinary, odd circumstances.
Mm-hmm.
And yeah, so The Road and The Mountain Man are really good examples of this. And I think that for me, I generally look, for novels that are like show inclusiveness, have like female empowerment. That's the kind of storytelling I love. These are not that. Just so everyone is aware. And it's mostly because...
Let's be clear. The ones you're talking about weren't. The ones I brought up mostly.
Yeah, the ones Gray brought up are very much that. So I think that if you're kind of looking for that, it'd be a good direction. But for me, these are books that I'm rereading. So in context, I read... The Road came out in 2006. I probably read it when I was, 17 or... and Mountain Man probably around a similar time. So, we're talking about like 10 years ago now. I would think before I really made an effort to go for things on purpose that were inclusive and people that kind of looked like me and my friends and were more representative. So these are very old reads that are kind of just regurgitated. But yeah, you can definitely probably find the same thing. Like I'm very interested in looking at the All City that you mentioned. But I just really like to see what would happen if you took someone and in the aftermath, people that are just people. They're not the strongest. They're not the savviest. They're just, your run-of-the-mill alcoholic guy living on a mountain. And now the post-apocalypse happens. So it kind of explores those things that you mentioned is like, what if you get hurt and you just have no idea how to dress a wound and you don't happen to have the wound dressing toolkits guide on your desk?
Do you have a tendency to because there's kind of two genres of this. There's the sort of lone wolf, I'm the superhero in whatever, form they come in. And then there's the sort of team of people that, band together. Do you have a preference for either one?
So I probably do have a preference of anything that kind of is while it's man versus wild, it's also like man versus himself kind of thing. So I probably do get drawn into very one character heavy, very monologue, and not monologue in the character talking, but just like following one character and their kind of intricacies. That's probably one of the reasons why I really love the first Law series, is that you get for glimpses of time to follow one character and their inner monologues. And also because I love a really dark read, and that also does it's also very dark read.
Makes sense.
Yeah. But how about you, Gray? What do you look for in, like, what is a theme that you really find is attractive to you and
Um,
coming back to?
Good question. I am so I mean it depends on the mood. Like I love me a good just combat, well written, fighting scene or something like that. um, and especially if it is told from an infantry point of view. Joe Abercrombie's The Heroes book was possibly my favorite one that he ever wrote, because it's just about 3 days from the perspective of the soldiers that are involved in it. That being said, I have kind of burned out on the whole, lone cis white male hero, or I've really burned out on the I am the chosen one who shall, who has been foretold and must be shepherded along
Yes.
by everybody else so I can do the one thing. Because among other things, it's just like, I'm like, who thought it was a good idea to put the entire fate of the world into the DNA of one person? That seems like really poor planning. But I'm a big fan. It's kind of like the whole, I'm more of a fan of Star Trek than Star Wars. And I think it's because I really like team ensemble work. I mean, putting together this Worldbuilders Weekly has been one of my favorite moments at Worldbuilders, because we had Jenny doing the prep work and Zoe doing the graphics, and we have Jamie doing the engineering now and having the OBS set up, and you and I are hosting, and we also have Captain Macbeth doing the engineering. And it's like the team just kind of all came together and everybody just put in their part, and at the end we had this nice whole piece. And I love moments like that in real life, and I love seeing it portrayed. When you have a team that comes together and accomplishes something together, that does it for me. That's what I really like. So that is kind of my preferred genre of things, which is probably why I like The Trouble of the Saints, because it's basically, even though it's told from the perspective of three different points of view, it's three people working together to do things, as opposed to just one person. So yeah, that's how I feel about it.
No,
Why do we reread books?
That's a question I had in there. I know that seems simple. Like, of course, why wouldn't I reread something that I enjoy? But my mindset behind that question, if I can expand a tiny bit, is I've always said this to my friends, is it really upsets me to think of how many amazing books there are out there, and I will never be able to live long enough to read all of them. Like, you could start today and you'd never make it. It's the same with traveling. You'll never be able to see everything you've ever wanted to see. So in that caveat, why then would we go back and essentially waste time kind of rereading the same story when there's so many out there we'd want?
I mean, it's like saying, why do you listen to the same music?
Right.
The same, why do you, because you find elements that you like differently. And also sometimes it's just a mood. One of the books, which totally eliminates everything I just said about the kind of book I like, but one of my favorite books that I go back to over and over again is the first two books in the Kane cycle by Matthew Woodring Stover, Heroes Die, and what was the other one called? I have it over here somewhere. Can't remember what the second one is called. But I will go back, and I have read those books so many over and over again. Or A Swiftly Tilting Planet by Madeleine L'Engle. I used to read that every Thanksgiving.
In the 70s, they'd tell me I totally sold out, but
yeah.
I love The Lord of the Rings, and I have reread those stories. over and over again. I think it's one of those things where, yeah, now we get like a lot of kind of regurgitations of that.
Mhm.
But in and of itself, it was kind of this masterpiece of written by like a linguist writing about language, and just the mood of the book
Mhm.
is very specific. But yeah.
What are some? I'd be interested to hear in the chat some books that people read over and over again. Things that people like. Uh,
Yeah.
but yeah, those. I also graphic novels. Like maybe once a year, I will reread all of the Preacher
Mm.
comics,
Yeah.
and there's something about that particular story arc that I like. Um, all of Pratchett's books. Yeah, definitely. Spinning
Yeah.
Silver by Naomi Novik. All right, cool.
Those are
Nice.
some good ones.
Yeah,
I know.
King Killer Chronicle books.
Yeah, that's a common one. A lot of people have reread
Yeah,
those
yeah, and
multiple
that
times.
is. I mean, you want to talk about people that could write the phone book and it'd probably be reread because it was written in a way. Um, is Pat Rothfuss's books. He is really talented at writing,
Yeah.
and describing and setting scenes and drawing somebody in. So
I
definitely.
was waiting. Zoe said Harry Potter. I was waiting for someone to say Harry Potter. That's another one of those.
Mhm.
I think, kind of
Untamed. I haven't heard that one.
yeah, I was just like the Deathgate
Making a
cycle.
list here. Deathgate Cycle and Green Rider series. I haven't heard of those. Sound interesting.
Those would be some good ones to keep in mind to take a look at. But
Go ahead.
no, I was just saying, I think, there's also like there's a comfort to rereading something when you know what's going to happen. It's kind of like, I think, like you said, it can be, why do you listen to the same music? Also, why do you watch the same shows over and over?
Mm-hmm.
I've rewatched The Office probably like 800 times, and it's just like a comfort in knowing the storyline and kind of being like in on the the joke, I guess.
And now you work at a place with Michael Scott. I mean,
Oh boy.
that's some true
Yeah.
dedication there.
Our warehouse manager's name is legitimately Michael Scott. He's also hasn't watched The Office that much, so.
Yes. Avatar: The Last Airbender. I'm interested. They're going to make another live action version, and what I've seen is people saying, "Hey, it might not actually suck the way the other one, the movie did." But Darker Shade of Magic. That sounds interesting. Who wrote that? K. Jewel Fox.
Darker Shade of Magic kind of reminds me, they're definitely not the same, of The Magician's Assistant. We once went around and we were talking about, what are the first books that really like hit you as kind of an adult novel? And I think when I was a younger person, The Magician's Assistant was probably the first like real adult read that I gave a try. It's a pretty cute like book.
Gotcha. The Paper Magician series. Actually, I think I've read the new series by the Paper Magician author of each one. Maybe it was a Dark Shade of Magic. I think I've actually read that book and I just didn't recognize the title. There has never been a war in Bossing Say. Yes. I will say that's one of the reasons. So there's another reason to reread a book. And actually, this actually really applies, is that at different times in your life, as you read a book, you will relate to it differently. Like my grandsons love Avatar: The Last Airbender because they identify with Aang and the Young, whereas I am totally loving Iroh. Like that's the person I identify with. And at certain points, one of the reasons I like that multi characters is because of the whole idea that you can find different people or one character in different stages of life, like doing that. Somebody mentioned Octavia Butler. I reread the Parable of the Sower and the Parable of the Talents every few years, although I've kind of stopped because they've stopped being fiction and started being way too close to reality. And I wish it was going the other direction.
Well, I like Gretchen's point here too. They mentioned briefly they get something new out of it every time. That's one thing about rereading a book that I really like. I think especially for me, Lord of the Rings. Um, I think that you relate to characters differently as you age. Especially when this is especially the case when you're looking at like a television show,
Mhm.
when you stop identifying with the child and start like identifying with the parent, kind of thing. Um, that's it's interesting to read something that's really complex. I think, especially like in emotions and relations to other people. Not that I'm saying Lord of the Rings is extremely complex in emotions, but I think it's just one of those things that different stages of your life you kind of feel for different characters or certain
Mhm.
situations.
Absolutely, absolutely. I find myself more and more and more sort of um, thinking about the role of the steward of Gondor, and that the role of steward in general, and Aragorn's not claiming the broken sword and things like those aspects of things now make me go round and round in my head because of the political and personal motivations. Whereas originally it's like, yeah, get the sword, lead the ghosts, you rock, you know.
Yeah.
Um, Chakraborty's Daevabad trilogy. I think. Oh, I was going to say I think Beth likes that, but Beth's the one who mentioned it. Um, yeah. Oh yeah, Tamara Pierce's Secret Circle of Magic. It's definitely good too. When I was younger, Andre Norton's books were big rereads for me. I'd read those over and over again. Um, but we are running close to the end of our time, and I do want to mention that we do get advanced listener copies of audiobooks on Libro. And so I just want to bring up a couple of books. One that I will just recommend a lot is, did I not have it up? I don't have it up. Dang it. It's called Ink. And it is a Stephen King style scary monster kind of supernatural thing. And it is eerie and spooky. And especially if you have tattoos or have any relation to the world of ink, it is, yeah, it's pretty scary. I'm going to find the author. Ink book, Libro, maybe just find it.
Just to make
Uh,
sure, did we actually finish the drawing?
Not yet. We will. We will.
All right.
Um, and I will also say that we're fans of the McElroy brothers, my brother, and me, and Adventure Time and things like that. They have a new book coming out called "Everybody Has a Podcast Except You," and we are currently doing an advanced listener copy of that. So we'll let you know how that goes, and we'll recommend that one as well in our as part of our Libro.fm. I'm excited to listen to them. I also want to give them a shout out. The Mobimbam Podcast did a really good job of responding to the fact that the person who composed the music to their theme song turned out to be a not so great person, saying a lot of things online recently. And the way that they handled that, took responsibility for it, and took action about changing it, I thought was a good example of the way that should be done. So compliments to them. Hey, I think we should do a drawing. That's your cue, Jamie. I think. All right. And I'm not sure. There, I drew an arc. Did I do it right, Julia?
Oh boy, Gray.
Oh, sorry. I guess I did it wrong. Yay, hey, we didn't say what we were drawing from.
Congratulations.
Hey, Imperfect Poor, if you're there, can you tell us what it is you would like to have? Because we didn't say which one we're giving away, so I'll give you your choice. You can choose from Automatic Eve or Firebreak or All City.
This might be easier to just message all these people which ones they'd be interested in.
Them all. If they're still here, I want to let them pick. Okay, then they will get whatever's left. Let's draw the next one. What we got? Imperfect Pour. Yay! Okay, so Essence of Aaron. Yay! All right, so Essence of Aaron. Which one would you like? Automatic Eve. Firebreak? Okay. I will make a note of that. Let me get my note, make sure I can make the right person. Imperfect Pour, Cat Macbeth will contact you for your shipping information. All right, so Imperfect Pour. All right, and Aaron, you get to choose between All City or Automatic Eve. I will suggest to you, knowing you as I do, that you would like Automatic Eve, because it happens to have a whole lot of stuff about, making limbs and things like that.
I would just like to say Imperfect Pour may not have meant Firebreak. They might have just been saying, like, that's fire, but I don't know.
Oh. Okay. We'll figure it out. All right. Okay, Aaron, yeah, okay, Aaron, let me know which one you want, Aaron. Yay! Who came into this saying that they were hoping to do some books. So I'm not sure which one you will get, K. Jewel Fox, but you'll get one of them, and we will contact you to get your information. And let's see, K. Jewel Fox. Great. All right. So we're hoping that we can, Imperfect Pour did mean Firebreak. Great. And Essence of Aaron, are you good with the Automatic Eve? And K. Jewel, that would mean you get All City. We will ship those out shortly. Yeah, thanks for participating. And we are going to try and do more giveaways of various things. We're lucky enough that we have people like Die Hard Dice that donate prizes. Want to give a huge thanks to Our Room of One's Own and Gretchen for giving us the galleys here that we could give away both here and in our prize draw. And we're hoping to do more. So spread the word to your friends and let them know that not only should they come here for our scintillating conversation and guests, but also because you can win stuff. And I think, anything else? Zay, I kind of lost track where we are, so you can wrench us back onto the script.
Yeah, if anyone has questions, you can always email questions@worldbuilders.org. Come here every week to sometimes find us with a guest author or creator or game developer, sometimes artist, or just Gray and I chatting. Visit worldbuildersmarket.com if you want to support Worldbuilders and get all of your unique, rare, and cool geeky items. Other than that, we'll see you next week on Twitch.
Yep, and keep an eye out to see who's might be here. And we'll do our ritual sign off, but the special word today is Bookamoose. Wow, I guess we have a delay. There we are, Bookamoose. Yay. All right, goodbye, everybody.